Okay, so just returning to the body, not to the self, to the body. Yeah, so when you return to the body, you become acutely aware of the environment that your body is a part of. When you come back to the self, you just sort of internalize and just you're with your own thoughts, and you become a little bit oblivious to what's around you. That's definitely what we don't want. So we're coming back to the body as center of mass and center of vitality. So matter and spirit. And the center of the body, the center of mass, the center of gravity is your dantian. And it's a difficult area because in one sense we're wanting the mind, not the sort of thinking mind, but the mind to sort of focus and cohere, really sort of zoom in on this point. But at the same time, we want this whole area to just really relax and expand. And just feeling the two in the sense, the two most obvious aspects of earth, of ground. So the gravity, which is just a force field that's just pulling everything down towards the ground, perpendicular. But also the sense that the ground is sucking at your feet. The ground is trying to earth you. It's trying to drain that sort of electrical energy out of you. And that's difficult because it requires us to trust, to trust the support that the earth is offering. So this was like Nitzan's spark of genius when he started working and teaching Tai Chi. He had no interest in fighting, and so he saw no reason to think in terms of yield and attack. So he just changed it instead to support and trust. So when you trust something, in a sense, you're trusting the support that it is offering you. So I have to trust the support that the ground is offering me, not just as a hard surface, but as a living thing. So this is the thing that we've lost. We no longer have a cosmology. The earth is no longer a living creature that we are host to, that we are the guest of. So imagine if you're like a sort of red Indian, sort of American Indian, and you've been brought up in the knowledge that the earth was a giant turtle and you're just on its back, just how differently you would place your feet on it as you walked, because it was a living creature. I mean, albeit with a temporality so different than our own, we're just much longer rhythms, but still alive. So we've lost all that. We no longer have a cosmology that makes any sense. We leave that to the scientists. And we just take everything that's not us as just inert and consumable. So just feeling the compassion of the earth. It's just so willing just to accept all of your pain, all of your suffering, all of your shit. So it's not just gravity. Gravity is much more like a rational concept of the Enlightenment, you know, Newton and his cronies. Yeah. So that's much more like an impersonal force. We want to feel as though we have a personal relationship with the earth. Yeah. As John once said, everything is personal. In much the way that you have a personal relationship with God. Yeah? But this is what, like, the non-religious, the atheists, they just can't get their mind around, that people can actually believe that there is some supreme being with whom they have a personal relationship. Yeah. So atheists can, okay, they can believe that there's a supreme being that's sort of just controlling the universe and ordering it, but nothing they can have a personal relationship with. Yeah. But we want a personal, we personalize everything. Yeah, so support and trust. Trust is the most important thing, really. Yeah, so it's when you can no longer trust, that's when your own mind becomes rabid and rampant, because you need to create your own support, because you can't trust the support that's being offered you from outside. Yeah. So we need this chatter, chatter, chatter. So the first stage to learning to quieten the mind is just learning to trust what's around you, to trust the ground beneath your feet, primarily. And then, you know, trusting other people, you know, giving them a little bit of power over you, trusting their opinions, their energy, their spirit, their heart. Okay, so just feeling the gentle back and forth, like the waves coming in and out of the sea. You know, there's nothing more enjoyable than just floating in the shallow sea and just letting the waves take you back and forth. And it's just got that certain rhythm, a lilt, which is slower than your body's rhythms, but of that order, so you can join it. But it's much more like the rhythm of the breathing than the heartbeat. So as we move, the breath is slowly harmonizing with the movement. Yeah. We're just allowing the breath to slow down, get long and deep. So this feeling that as you breathe in, you're taking in the whole room. So your heart is expanding to contain the total environment. Yeah. Yeah, so this is what they're saying now, that the human mind finds it very difficult to think or conceptualize higher order structures of which it is only a tiny part. Yeah. So like ecosystems, we can't, it's impossible for us to think the ecosystem of which we are a member. So the mind is suited to looking at things, tearing them to pieces, killing them, tearing them to pieces, and just looking at each little piece in turn. And then just extrapolating a construct, extrapolating a togetherness from an analysis of all these dead pieces, which is just obviously impossible. So it's up to the human heart to actually embrace, bring things together and reanimate them. Yeah. So just feel the two legs, yeah? So when we're moving slowly, we tend to be with the body moving, the mass, yeah, my weight. So my mind is with my body because my mind is in my body. It's only when I'm moving really, really quickly that my mind sort of leaves my body and my mind tends to be with the energy. So now my mind is with my body. So I can just really feel this leg receiving the body, loading like a spring, and then just gently ejecting it. So that's what we want to feel, that point of compression and this rubbery, elastic expansion that starts the process of me bouncing back. So like a ball. And we just want to just really relax, enjoy the sensation, but really register the sensation of moving well. To move well is to live well. Because movement is just energy. So gradually, by being with the body, the mind it quietens, it just becomes still inside this moving body. And when the mind becomes still, with a relaxed stillness rather than a forced one, you become spiritually capable. So you are capable of using and manipulating spirit. Yeah. So once we've got this moving back and forth in a gentle, smooth way, then we can start noticing the empty foot, because that is where the spirit lurks. And that will call us. So my foot is calling me towards it. So I still have that internal stillness, but there's something in me that's very much outside my body now, part of the room. So spirit calls. So we just want to feel that, but also feel how we become when we allow ourselves to be drawn by spirit. We become toned up. There's something in us that just contracts. We become more sort of neat, less sort of dispersed and vaporous as we were when we were just moving in a relaxed way from foot to foot. Now we're very much sort of contained with this elastic skin. So now there's part of us that's actually drawing in rather than just relaxing out. And that's really important, because without that, you won't attract grace and spirit. You won't attract the Holy Spirit. Something in you has to say, wow, I'm really listening. Come on. Yeah. So you need to become attractive, and you become attractive not by exposing a beautiful exterior. That's like a beauty that dazzles and repels. You become attractive by having a draw, having a tightening inside you. In the belly and in the spirit. It's like it becoming small, becoming imperceptible. You're sort of shrinking. And as you shrink in, it's pulling everything with it. So you're not shrinking in order to hide, but in order to become attractive. Wow. And this is the empty side, where the energy and the spirit will manifest. So like, I'm already there, my spirit is already there, and my body needs to catch up to it. And then the spirit just Because the spirit is weightless, it has infinite speed, and so it just jump from one foot to the other with no problem. So the spirit is similar to mind. Like in the old days, if you read of Agrius, the Desert Fathers, mind and spirit are just the same thing for them, because their mind hadn't been sullied by ego, by self-interest. And the same with like the greats of the Enlightenment, Galileo and Newton. I mean, it was a spiritual, their work they considered spiritual. Even Kant, even Nietzsche, that I've just found a book that's, saying that Nietzsche was effectively a Zen master. He was a Buddhist Zen, despite his railing against Buddhism. That was only because he misunderstood what Buddhism was. If you read his writings in the context of Zen Buddhism, he's an enlightened Zen master. Right, so now let's just bring it back. And so we just, the part that's, the part of the mind that's in the Dantian, we just let it settle. But then there must be that other part that's sort of just bright and just sort of really sort of curious and interested and almost agitated, So in that, the Nietzsche quote, we have to come back to that contemplative quietness in order to find the correct activity, because most activity is neurotic. It's just because I'm fearful. It comes from fear. So we want an activity that just comes from a bright spirit rather than from a frightened mind. So part of me is just almost ready to fall asleep and just dwell contentedly in my belly. And another part of me is all these little butterflies that are just, like that poem that I sent where, the Zen master is a cloud of gnats. It's a beautiful image. Well, like Thich Nhat Hanh, in my last life, I was a cloud and I was very happy being a cloud. So this, you are just a togetherness that's just ready to just disperse and break up. And you're most alive, not when you're most condensed, but when you're right at the edge of life and death. So just feel the sacrum. So what's beneath the min meng? So that's the bit we want to try and get vertical, which means the upper back will just lean back a little bit. Not a lot, but just a bit. Almost like you're sort of leaning back into an armchair contentedly. And then your mind will just naturally draw into here. So the part of the spine you're attending to is that bottom bit that's just directly opposite the dantian. So you're really super aware of this part of your body, the part of your body that we're normally completely oblivious to. And that, you know, the thing about Nietzsche that people find distasteful is basically his megalomania, yeah, his sort of intensity. And in a way, that's the bit that's important, yeah. Because when you become nice and bourgeois and understanding and all that shit, you get like a mood of depression. It's like everything drops, and people are just enervated. They lack luster. They lack luster. They lack shine and gleam. And that's the one thing Nietzsche had. He just shone, yeah, like a god, yeah. So that we want, and so our spirit that's dancing around, that's the gleam, that's the glint, you know, that's what we really want to sort of, we'd like that to be absolutely crucial. Without it, we're effectively dead spiritually. They made that famous book, When Nietzsche Wept. It's a good book by Irving Yalom, the guy that sort of invented group therapy. He's a therapist. He's still alive, I think. But they made a movie of it. And the guy that plays Nietzsche just does it so well. Yeah. Obviously with the big moustache, but just really sort of passionate. It's worth watching. Just feel that you're just being drawn into the ground and you're happy to go there, but something else is calling you out. So you're being torn. You're always being torn. And that's our fate, really. That's our destiny, you know, to be drawn by both heaven and earth. And to just somehow just make a go of it, yeah? Because when you're being pulled in both directions, you naturally have to have all these really strong, tense, toned sort of forces inside you to hold yourself together, yeah? That's what we've lost, largely because we've lost heaven. Yeah? So we don't feel the draw up anymore. We feel the draw down because we can't avoid it, you know, because we have mass, gravity acts upon us. Yeah. But there's something up there pulling my heart as equal as something down here is pulling my body. Otherwise, there just wouldn't be that balance. You know, you'd be even more depressed than you are already. You know, that quote of Byung-Chul Han, you know, depression is just drowning in self. We are depressed because we have lost the other, lost the negativity of the other, lost the threat of the other. So we've produced an environment that is purely positive, and it's positivity that produces depression. Yeah. Negativity will just produce spirit and fight, vitality. Okay, so let's just try a little bit of work with the chair. Yeah, so let's just get a chair. Just need the back of the chair, so we're not going to sit down. So just investigating a different quality of motion. Okay. So again, just like, you know, just before we were standing and riding horse. And then we just move ourselves from leg to leg, but instead of using the leg to move yourself, you're just using the arm. Now, of course, you are using your leg because the force that you're applying with your arm is minute, but it's just enough to start you going. Yeah. Yeah, so I can't push this chair too hard, otherwise it would slip and slide on the floor. So I'm just using a finger strength. So I'm pushing the chair this way in order to move the body this way, and then I'm pushing the chair this way. Yeah. And just feeling the movement. If you don't have that ability to just quieten the mind and just contentedly watch what's happening and listen to what's happening, then this will just seem like a waste of time. That's why I love it so much. So when I push here, ooh, just feel the lift that comes up you, just to sort of counter gravity a little bit so that you can glide. So my body can glide across from one foot to the other with almost no sort of effort. Just the effort of this little finger, this finger just, ooh, something has to rise up inside me. That's the lift of spirit. If you can't feel that, and if you don't have a taste for that, if that, when you feel it, doesn't become the most fascinating and beautiful thing in your life, then you're not destined for spiritual work. So, ooh. Yeah, so this is really, I think, what John called thymus. I mean, he only really started talking about that when I left. So there's this feeling, something just lifting to the upper heart, to where, you know, where the thymus gland would be. And it just feels like that area expands, almost like a light turns on there. Yeah, so that's what someone like Nietzsche really had. He had thymus, you know, he had pride in a good way. And for me, that's what that Byung-Chul Han is. He's just like a modern day Nietzsche. Someone that's just seeing all these evil structures in the world and in society, and just, you know, complete reevaluation. That's what's required. Don't be one of the herd, yeah? Look at things and just decide, you know, do I want to conform to that? Will it really make me free? And of course, freedom is terrifying. You know, with freedom comes the responsibility to act. And so we're allowing that lift of spirit within the body without letting it bring the body up. So it takes, you know, quite a lot of sort of sinking and relaxing first. You can't do this with anyone. They need experience of Tai Chi, really. Yeah, so I'm working, the only student I have that actually practices is a guy here, I mean, and it's about 2 years in now, and now he's just beginning to feel the spirit. But that's only because he can sort of really stay down And then just by, you just notice it because your body's sinking. So you think, oh shit, something's moving in the opposite direction. If your body was coming up, you wouldn't notice it because the body is so coarse and just obliterates any other effect. So like, when that famous story of Emily Dickinson, when she was asked, how do you know it's poetry? She says, when it takes the top of my head clean off, then I know it's poetry. Because it's just, that lift of astonishment, really. Almost like when something takes your breath away. It's so beautiful, it's so unusual, so unexpected that it takes your breath away and just shocks you into a world that is just so different than your normal one. That's what we want all the time. We want to be astonished. And then just use just the one hand. So you push this way to move that way. And then you push the other way to move the other. So it's like you're pushing and pulling, really. Ugh. So we just have to get used to using the arms to move the body. Because then that will invite energy to come in. So when you bring the hand up and place it on the other person, instead of just leaning your body weight into it, you allow that placement to drive you down into the ground and away from them. Yeah. And then energy will just come in. You only need to do it for like a split second. And it's really more in the mind. So it's like a listening hand. You're listening not just with the hand, but with the whole body. Yeah, so we just keep on repeating something ad nauseum until there occurs this phenomenon I call switching. Until enough spirit comes in to transform it almost into the opposite. And it's very much like when, when a relationship moves from being platonic to being sexual, from being friendship into being erotic. Yeah. Something happens, there's a transformation. It enters a new world. And you can never go back. New world, new rules, new energies, new intensities, new passions, new connections. Yeah. Okay. And now let's just try this one that's just a bit more difficult, which is just using the hands to get an up and a down. Yeah. So basically, I sort of try and lift the chair off the floor in order to get my body to just sink down. And then I put my hands on top of the chair and just press gently down, and my body will rise up. Yeah. So just feeling the pulling producing the down and the pushing down producing the up. Yeah, so obviously both forces are present at the same time, but one in your hands and one in your body. And just try and get it really fine so that the body only responds when you apply the pressure. Because what tends to happen when you really drive yourself into the legs here, as soon as you release the pressure, the legs want to pop up. You don't want that. You place your hands and then you just press, and slowly the body starts moving. So I pull. And then I push. I'm pushing myself up by pushing the chair down. I'm pulling myself down by pulling the chair up. Whoa. It's actually easier to do this with the wall. You just have your hands on the wall and you just push your hands up, and that will drive your body down. And then push your hands down. That's the way John used to do it. But since the chair is here, we might as well use it. Okay. And now let's try the last one, which is just producing a turn. So you can just use one hand. So I'm just pulling the chair now towards me, and that will pull my hip towards it and produce a turn. And then I push the chair that way, and it will push my hip back the other way. And just try and get round as far as you can. So always trying to extend the limits, the range. Yeah, just requires quite a bit of practice, this. Because when you get it well, the mind just naturally quietens, yeah. And just change direction. So we'll change hands. Yeah, so it's like a caress. A caress cannot be rushed. The caress lingers. So this is like this slow sort of movement. You just need an attention span long enough just to stay with it, which is a tall order nowadays. So it's a lingering slowness. It's not a dead grinding to a halt slowness. Byung-Chul Han, he has, there's what I think my favorite of his books. It's just called The Scent, as in S-C-E-N-T, The Scent of Time, an essay in the art of lingering. So his argument is just basically that time has lost any sort of duration. Everything's accelerating nowadays. And the only way to just really relax is just to sink into long time, into deep time, where you're not in a rush. And for that, of course, you just need real inner contentment. Because what it is that makes us rush is just a discontent mind. Okay, so now let's just put the chair back. And just come back to our riding horse. Yeah, so that, I find those really quite valuable because it just sort of, it produces a movement that you'd find difficult to manage by using the legs. Because it would just tend to settle into like a heaviness and you'd feel, oh, it'd be more like, that's useful as well for building power in the legs, but that's just like a floating movement. And it's just very, very slow. And the mind is just completely quiet within it. Okay, now let's just try just turning the waist. Yeah, just remember, we're always after that phenomenon that I call switching. Yeah. So it's basically, that's what the advanced students would get into in any discipline, I think. Yeah. To start with, what you're studying appears to be one thing. You have quite a clear idea of what it is and what it is that you're doing and what it is that you're studying. And then there comes a point where you're not sure anymore. It's all so sort of vague and sort of nebulous, and it's just sort of changing all the time anyway. And then there's like a new clarity, and then you realize it's actually the opposite of what you thought it was. And it's very much with Tai Chi. So to start with in Tai Chi, everyone thinks it's all to do with like being relaxed and slow, graceful movements, But then there comes a point where the spirit just really comes awake and everything just becomes really tense and ferocious and fast. So that's the Taoist structure of study, if you like. And so here we're just sort of turning the waist gently from side to side. And then you just sort of, you just want the legs just to become active in a sort of twisty, turny way. And one way to do it is just turn so much that your leg has to sort of do this to throw you out of it, yeah? So you're forcing the feet to work on the ground to produce the counter turn, yeah? So this foot twists that way to throw me out. It's almost like I get irritated. Yeah? So that's often how spirit will manifest. It'll manifest because something in you's just got annoyed at just how tedious and boring it is. So instead of letting that irritation and annoyance start you on these resentful conversations with yourself, saying, oh, why has he got me doing this? It's so fucking boring. It's such a cunt, all this, yeah. So that we just keep that quiet and just let that spirit, that irritation and annoyance just express itself in the body. Yes, this foot is twisting that way. And then when it really stretches, it pulls back, yeah. And so the movement comes into the spine. So very much the legs as two snakes that are coiling around each other. So the spine being the coiled part. Yes, my leg reaches all the way to these fingers because basically there is a train, a muscular train as in chuff, 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 yeah, through the body. So that's what they're talking about muscular trains, you know, a connectivity through the muscles and the sinews from one part of the body to the other, to another, through which energy can ripple if you have it toned and connected in the right way. So that train has to have a sort of homogeneity. You know, there's a uniformity through it. And that will then produce the best conductive path for the energy. So just feel this part of the body really twisting and it will just start you becoming animal. You know, so you need this ability to let the spirit turn you into an animal and let the spirituality spirit, the Holy Spirit, turn you into an angel, into a saint. Yeah? And then you can slip between the two. So here, I'm from the ground. It's as though my foot is really pulling and pushing into the ground. It's twisting. It's that twist, the toes writhing on the ground, that actually produces the spirited movement. It's like, you know, you pace with meaning, yeah. So you put the foot on the ground with real intensity and gravitas. And that then gives you access not just to energy, but to spirit. So here. Like in Chen style, where they have those postures where you just sort of stamp the foot and bang the fist. And I mean, it's meant to make the whole room resonate, that stamp. Like you put the foot down and you really mean it. And just letting the head go. So the more you can let the head go, the more you will evoke energy. Because the energy is just, it's like a flamboyance, really. You just become a little bit camp. You know, look, one of those sort of flower power guys from the 60s with all their frills and their tie-dyed colours. Colourful. Okay. So let's just bring it back and just straight into like this. So breathing into the spine. As you breathe out, let the spine almost collapse. And then as you breathe in, let the spine inflate like a balloon that's getting toned up because it's inflating. And now it's sort of deflating a bit. Spine is extending. And the spine is just sort of collapsing a little bit. And just really relaxed. And then again, I mean, if you keep it going, it will switch. Something in you will just start getting a little bit impatient. And here, you'll realize that you actually have to really pull here to get the hands in. It's not enough just to let them relax in. Same here. Like, imagine you're in the pool up to your neck, just how difficult these movements would be because you're having to displace the water with your hands. So here you're really using the muscles in the back to pull the shoulder blades together, and then here really using the muscles in the belly and the chest. So you just, when you switch, you just feel the world differently. You feel the world more like an animal would, as a creature that has its spirit really up and ready, like a fighter. Yeah, so just imagine someone's holding your arms out and you have to really pull here to get them to come in. Yeah, so this is like going out in order to catch the quarry, and then this is just sinking your teeth into it and breaking its neck. You know, here you're just killing the thing, smothering it. Here you're reaching out, and then you bring in that apple and bite into it. Yeah, because if you're moving like really quickly, then effectively there's no gravity. Yeah. So if you need to pull your hand down quicker than gravity will pull it, then effectively there's no gravity. You know, gravity is a weak force. Compared to the forces that we are able to muster with our spirit. Yeah, so just feel it. So everything that you do, just sort of imagine it's a bit of a struggle, it's a bit of a fight. Yeah, so you're having to fight to get the hands in, you're having to fight to get them out again. And the more strongly you need to fight, eventually it will switch again. It will switch into like a single weightedness. So you'll get like a wriggly turn into it. You'll just naturally turn as you do it, because you can just get more effort into one hand by turning with it. Yeah, so it will just become the two hands acting a little bit sort of independently. And that's really what we want. That's when it becomes interesting. And then the spine doesn't just whip on this plane, it's whipping side to side as well. It gets really quite complex. That's what we want. A complexity that is quite natural when your spirit is up, but it's sort of, you can't really analyze it and copy it. So if the energy is coming from the right place, then you'll produce it. But you can't see someone doing it and then think, oh, I'll do that. It just won't quite work. So and just feeling the energies just coiling up the legs and just squeezing through your torso into your arms. Very much like snakes. And now let's just let it segue into the figure of 8. And just get the movement into the spine, as close to the spine as possible. Yeah. So just feel the ripples, feel the musculature, the connected musculature, the trains of muscle. Yeah, so this is very much coming from this leg, just reaching up through the body. I'm sinking into the leg, but I'm turning this way, and that's forcing a coil to come up from the ground. Yeah, so you've got all these coily snakes wrapping around your limbs. Yeah, so the spiral is just really important, but that only comes from the single weightedness, really, from the turning. Without turning, you won't produce spirals. Yeah, so but we just need to appreciate that we only really authentically get to that place of spirals, that place of real turning, if we go through a series of switchings. So we need to start off very simple and very relaxed. And slowly over the course of the session, it will intensify until it becomes something it could never be to start with. unless you're shocked into that space. So if it's suddenly called out, if you got into a fight or something, then the shock, instead of it making you flinch, which it does with most people, it would actually shock you into the zone of spirit and spirals, yeah? And then you just become eminently capable. So you'd be capable of speed and incisiveness, decisiveness. Your spirit would cut through anything. Yes, the beauty of the figure of 8 is it's, in a sense, it's waist. You know, the bit in the middle where it sort of crosses over. So this bit here where it's like you're really tightening the waist and then it balloons out either end. So it's got this tightness in the middle and then this expressiveness top and bottom. Just want to just really feel that. And again, just imagine there's resistance to everything that you're doing. Everything is a fight. Everything is a struggle. If it's not, it will just tend to get slack and useless. And then it will just become aesthetic. It will just become like a design, a pretty design. And that's always the problem with the figure of 8. Okay. And now let's just bring it back. So just feel how that sort of twisty turning has just brought a different quality of tone into your midriff, into your core. And so it's very difficult to overestimate how important the core is, but not in the way that, you know, it would strengthen if you were doing the plank for sort of 10 minutes a day, but more from this turning, the twisting, not so much the turning like this, but like, you know, if you were sitting on a chair and your hips were immobilized because you were sitting and you were turning like this, not by throwing your shoulders round, but by just tightening one side against the other. That's that sort of deep muscular action that's really quite gritty and determined. Now that's what we need. That's what will really make your spirit fierce. So very not bourgeois, very uncomfortable, very unpleasant. Yeah. Okay, now let's just squat just for a minute or so. Yeah, so down to earth, getting down and dirty, close to the ground. And just really feeling how the energy changes. It's quieter down here. It's colder, it's more somber, more gloomy, more serious. But those are really like unnecessary labels, really. It's just more still, it's just quieter. And just feeling the absolute compassion of Mother Earth. You know, she's draining all of my pain, my excess, my surplus out of me. And allowing it to replace with just a quiet contentment that has no expectations. John had a beautiful saying, low expectations, high self-worth. Yeah, so this is what this gives you. It just gives you that contentment, which is just high self-worth. You know what you are, but you don't have any expectations of being any more. Nitzan is getting me to proofread his book, which has been written in Hebrew, of course, and he's translating it into English, and he's asking me to sort of just, and he's written a chapter on business. Yeah. I'm not sure why. And basically it's a book of interviews with this business consultant who was a student of his, and these interviews were published in Haaretz, I think, the left-wing newspaper in Israel. I mean, left-wing in Israel is still pretty fascist. And so he's just made a book out of them. It's already been published in Hebrew. And he sent me the chapter on business. And for me, the nicest part of it was where the interviewer lists all his expectations of what the bourgeois life should give him. You know, the fancy apartment, the cars in plural, yeah, the holidays, the skiing holidays, the children, and all this shit. And Nitzan sort of protesting, saying, you know what, you're just expecting a bit too much. And then the guy says to Nitzan, what do you expect? He says, well, nothing really. I just want to do what I love, which is teaching Tai Chi and helping people find their root and their center. Yeah. And he said, and it just means that basically I'm poor. And the guy says, well, how poor are you? He says, well, I'm a lot poorer than any of my students. Yeah. And I just thought, wow, I mean, that's humility. That's willing to take the bottom rung. Yeah. And it's like the example of the teacher. It's the one thing that the student will not accept. Yeah. They will not accept that level of poverty. They need the Tesla. For me, like the Tesla is like the image, the symbol of the devil, symbol of the ego, the desiring ego. And deliver us from evil. That's what that means. Deliver us from the ego. Don't let the ego take control of me. So when people say, how can there be a God when there's evil in the world? Well, it's quite easy, really, because all evil comes from the human ego. There's no evil from God. And well, why doesn't he stop the human ego? Because it's God is a weak force, yeah? It's even weaker than gravity. If you feel it, you believe, and if you don't, you're stupid, as far as I'm concerned. The course, full of self. And now just hands on the ground, just bringing some weight over, and just feeling the arms filling up with strength. So it fills up slowly. It takes like a few seconds to reach the middle of the back. And again, just feel it threatening to switch. Yeah. So it's like, you know, we've got that stillness of the ground, but something in me is just fighting the tension. And something in me just starts wriggling a little bit. And that just means it's switched. It's gone into a slightly higher dimension, slightly higher awareness, higher energy level. And if you kept it going, if you had a mind that was sort of focused enough to stay with that, it would switch again into an even higher level. And you'd end up screaming, not with the agony, but with the ecstasy, yeah, with the energy of the spirit. And then just sort of rock back, and again, just let the legs fill up and the arms empty, and then just feel that click when you lift the hands from the ground. But also just feel the clarity that's come through your upper body and your head from just allowing the ground to earth you through the hands. This is what we've lost. So the legs have to do all the work now, which is a tall order. This is why we need to place the feet on the ground with real care and meaning. Okay, so let's just try one more. So just place the hands, just feel the ground, just draw the energy out of you. It's like something in you just breathes a sigh of relief. So you're accepting the support, not the physical support, but the energetic support of the earth. You're allowing it to operate upon you. It's not just a thing that you're pushing away from. It's something that you're communicating with, you're exchanging with. And then just bringing the weight forwards. And again, just let it slowly fill up. Yeah, and you can just just by moving the pressure around a little bit on your hands, you can sort of ease the pressure and the energy into different parts of your body. You can direct it down into your tail just by sort of just wriggling it a little bit, or you can direct it all the way up into your skull by extending the neck a little bit. So you can just send that energy where it needs to go, and it will tend to need to go where it's not going until the switch happens. When the switch happens, it will tend to go where it needs to go. But so you can just feel, where am I? Just a little bit asleep. Often the neck, the tailbone, and the vestiges, like your little tail, your little toes, your little fingers, and just deep into your core and your heart, your fierce heart, your lion's heart. Yes, just rousing yourself up until you're ready to fuck or fight. I've got a student that's like really aggressive. Yeah, and she thinks she's really sort of tough and sort of a good fighter and everything. But actually, if you just stand up to her, she just backs down like a sort of whimpering baby. So she's basically just a bully. Okay, so let's bring it up. Whew. This takes a few moments to settle back into being up here. So it's not so much that we've straightened up, it's just that we've got to come away from the ground and just feel that. It's almost like you're floating in sort of no man's land, and the body would actually be a lot happier if you were still down there. Certainly your dantian would be. So you want that feeling that when you come up, you don't snap. Almost like you know, when you're down there, you develop like these elastic connections with the ground. And then when you come up, they sort of stretch, but they don't snap. So they're trying to pull you down all the time. And then that'll just keep your mind in sort of quiet earth mode. Subterranean. A subterranean seriousness for which admittedly not all are suitable. It's Nietzsche. And then it's just close it down, bring it back to here. Yeah. So compared to riding horse, this sort of feels like a real weakening. So we don't want that to let the mind do this and this thing, oh, thank God for that, it's all over. I can go and have my breakfast now. So, you know, because the posture sort of just weakens and slackens and loses its vitality, the mind has to compensate for that by just becoming just a little bit more fierce and together. And just feel that muscle train. I love that. It's the guy student I had, the acupuncturist, the one that practices, a rare student, told me about the muscle trains. Yeah, so this feeling of like a connectivity down from your crown, but down the back, down the spinal erectors, across the glutes, down the hamstrings, down the calves, down the Achilles tendon, underneath the foot. Ooh, okay.